The chandelier overhead sparkled like a frozen firework, its crystals catching the light and flinging it across the glossy marble floor. Every corner of the room glowed gold. Every plate was porcelain, every napkin folded like origami. This was not just a dinner, it was a performance. Waiters in black suits drifted in and out like shadows, balancing trays of truffle risotto and lamb chops glazed to perfection. A string quartet played softly in the background. Mozart, maybe. Or something equally polished. The guests, they were dressed for the opera. Velvet gowns, designer cufflinks, smiles just wide enough to impress, but not wide enough to wrinkle. And right there at the far edge of the long mahogany table, Emily. Emily sat in silence, her back straight, her hands clasped in her lap. Her navy dress simple and quiet, almost too quiet for a room like this. No one noticed. She hadn't made an entrance, because no one cared that she arrived. No heads turned. No one called her name. Her presence, like her entire life, had slipped in unnoticed. Meanwhile, at the center of the room, under the full glow of the chandelier, Lily laughed. Of course she did. Lily, shining, perfect Lily, stood with a champagne flute in hand, emerald silk clinging to her like it was tailored by the stars. Her voice sparkled with the confidence of someone who'd never been overlooked a day in her life. Aunt Linda said she looked like a movie star. Uncle Ben said she's going places. Their father, Robert, laughed loudly. Their mother, Susan, beamed proudly. And Lily basked in the center of it all like a queen being crowned again. Emily watched it all, and then quietly sat down at the only empty seat left, at the very end of the table. Her gift for her father, an expensive leather briefcase she had saved for 6 months to buy, sat on her lap, still wrapped in paper he might never open. No one turned to greet her. No one asked how she was. And in that moment, beneath all the lights and chandeliers and false cheer, Emily knew she wasn't really part of this celebration. She was just the background to Lily's spotlight. They cheered for Lily. No one noticed Emily walked in. And deep down, she knew something else. Tonight would break her, or finally set her free. Before the crystal chandeliers, before the velvet gowns, before the wine and inheritance, there was just a little girl. Holding a painting in her hands, Emily was 7 years old. It was her first school art contest, and she'd worked on that painting for weeks. Soft watercolor strokes, a garden of swirling colors, sunflowers dancing in pale blue skies. Her teacher had said it was exceptional for her age, and she was proud. Not of winning first prize, though, she did, but of finally creating something she thought her parents would love. She rushed home, still wearing her tiny plastic medal, the painting clutched tightly in her fingers. Her heart beat faster with every step toward the kitchen where her mom stood. "Mom, look, I won!" Susan looked up from her phone, blinked once, and smiled faintly. "That's nice, Emily." Then turned her attention to Lily, who was spinning in her tutu in the living room. "Sweetheart, your pirouettes are getting so good." Emily stood there forgotten, her painting slowly drooping at her side. That was the first time she tasted what love with conditions felt like, but not the last. When Emily was 14, she built a physics model for the state science fair. She spent 3 weeks soldering wires, calculating angles, and programming motion sensors. Her project not only won the blue ribbon, but the judges pulled her aside to say she should pursue engineering. She ran home, a photo of her project in one hand, the ribbon in the other. "Dad, look what I made!" Robert took the photo, glanced once, and said, "Good job, honey. Just don't let it distract Lily from her theater auditions. She needs quiet to practice." Then handed the picture back without looking again. And Emily? She smiled, because she had learned by then not to expect applause, just silence. Lily got roses when she remembered her lines. Emily got ignored when she rewired a circuit board. In their home, love had a spotlight. And it was never pointing at her. By the time Emily was 16, a label had been gently but firmly stamped across her identity. She's the independent one. Not brilliant, not kind, not even responsible, just independent. It was meant to sound like praise, but it was a cage disguised as a compliment. Her parents, Robert and Susan, wore their favoritism like perfume, subtle to them, suffocating to her. They adored Lily. They called her their sunbeam, their star, their light in every dark room. She was the child they talked about at parties, the one they posted about online. Lily was their pride. Emily, she was their relief, the daughter they didn't have to worry about, the one who never asked for anything, the one who was always fine. Whenever relatives asked about Emily, Susan would shrug with a tight smile and say, "Oh, Emily, she's doing fine. She's always been self-sufficient." But what no one said out loud, what no one dared to admit, was that self-sufficient was their excuse to abandon her emotionally. They gave Lily their attention, their money, their applause. They gave Emily expectations. "You're the strong one, Emily. You always manage. You don't need as much." But strong doesn't mean invincible. And being quiet isn't the same as being okay. Emily didn't resent being capable. She resented being invisible. And no one, not even her sister, ever noticed she was slowly shrinking. Not until one night, one room, one decision, would break the silence she'd been trapped in her entire life. By the time Emily was 24, she was juggling 2 jobs, 3 textbooks, and 1 dream, barely. She worked mornings at a downtown cafe, taking orders from businessmen too busy to look up from their phones. She spent evenings tutoring high school students in math and science subjects she once loved, but now just paid the bills. At night, she logged into her online university account, squinting at a cracked laptop screen from the corner of her mattress. There was no desk, no study lamp, just a small one-room apartment with mismatched furniture, chipped paint, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. But what there was art. Canvas sheets leaned against every wall. Pencils scattered across the floor. Half-finished watercolors dried on the windowsill beside empty ramen cups. Art was the only thing that felt like hers. Not her parents', not Lily's, just hers. She paid her own rent, bought her own groceries, filed her own taxes. No help, no safety net, no "we're proud of you," and worst of all, she never asked, because deep down, Emily already knew the answer. Why ask people for help, she once told herself, when they've spent your whole life pretending you didn't need any? So she didn't ask. Not for tuition, not for a laptop upgrade, not even for a ride when she got sick and nearly fainted walking home. She just endured, because that's what the strong one does, even when she's breaking. Lily, standing in front of the Duomo di Milano, her Gucci sunglasses glint under the Italian sun. A flowy designer dress hugs her body like it was sewn in heaven. She's holding a gelato, posing, laughing. The caption, "Living my dream." Hashtag Milano moments, hashtag blessed, hashtag booked and busy. Thousands of likes flood in. Her parents comment within minutes. "Our beautiful star. Mom. We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Dad." Meanwhile, across the ocean, Emily scrubs a toilet. Rubber gloves on her hands, knees on a tiled floor. Bleach burns her nose. Her phone buzzes. A message from her mother. "Your independence, Emily, is so admirable." No emojis, no warmth. And then, like a punch straight to the gut, an email notification pops up. A bank transfer of $20,000 from her parents to Lily. Memo line, "For acting coach and wardrobe upgrades." Emily stares at the screen. She's never asked for $20, let alone $20,000. No one ever offered. And here they were showering Lily with money, as if talent could be bought. As if worth came in the form of silk and spotlight. She tossed the rag into the bucket, her hands shaking. That same voice played in her mind again. You're the strong one, Emily. You don't need as much. But strength without support isn't power, it's punishment. The call came on a Thursday. Emily was walking home from the bus stop, her feet sore, her uniform still smelling of burnt espresso and bleach. She was halfway up the stairs to her apartment when her phone rang. Mom? She hesitated before answering. They didn't call often, and when they did, it was never for her. She picked up. Emily, Susan said, tone clipped, efficient. Your father's birthday is next week. A pause. You should come. Do the right thing. No. How are you? No. We'd love to see you. Just obligation. Just duty. Emily swallowed hard. She glanced up at the flickering hallway light and the peeling paint around her doorframe. Okay, she said, quiet, flat. I'll be there. She knew what this was. Not a real invitation, but an expectation. A performance she was required to show up for, even if no one would ever see her. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Emily stepped into a world that didn't feel like hers. The penthouse was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the glowing skyline like artwork, chandeliers dripping in crystal, walls painted in soft ivory, kissed by the flicker of candlelight. Guests in tuxedos and silk gowns filled the room like it was a gala. A string quartet played Vivaldi. Waiters carried trays of oysters and champagne flutes. Everything sparkled. Everything, except Emily. She stood still for a second, coat still clutched in her hand, suddenly aware of how simple her navy dress was, how out of place she looked. No one greeted her. No one turned. It was like she'd walked into someone else's family. At the far end of the room, Lily twirled into a group of admirers dressed in silver sequins that shimmered with every step. And in the center, Robert, her father, holding court like a king. Emily approached him slowly, gift in hand. She had spent 6 months saving for it, a genuine leather briefcase engraved with his initials, something he could use every day, something that mattered. Happy birthday, Dad, she said softly. Robert looked at her, blinked once, then took the package without smiling. Thanks, he muttered. I'll check it out later. He placed it on the table beside him, next to a crystal bowl of roasted almonds, and turned back to the group. Emily stood there for a moment longer. No hug, no warmth, not even eye contact, just dismissal. The briefcase sat unopened, forgotten, just like her. The clinking of a glass silenced the room. Robert stood. He tapped the side of his champagne flute with a silver ring once, twice, until the music faded and the conversation stopped. All eyes turned to him. He smiled. The kind of smile that says, I have something important to say and you're all going to applaud. Emily's chest tightened. She knew that smile. She'd grown up under it. A smile not meant for her. Family, Robert began raising his glass. Tonight, I turn 60. 60 years of hard work, success, and most importantly, family. He turned slightly toward Lily. Susan and I have always done our best to give our daughters everything we could. Emily's stomach turned. She gripped her napkin under the table. And now, as we look toward the future, we've made a decision. One we're proud of. Lily adjusted her hair. Her lips curled. She already knew, but Emily didn't. Not really. We've decided, Robert said, lifting his glass higher, to gift our entire savings, $500,000, to Lily. Silence. A sharp, unnatural kind of silence. The kind that sucks the air out of a room. Someone gasped. A fork dropped. Emily didn't move. Her ears rang. Her vision blurred. But her body sat perfectly still. Robert continued, voice booming. Lily has always been our shining light. She's talented, dedicated, and ready to conquer the world. Then he turned to Emily. His tone changed, lower, colder. And Emily, you've always been the strong one. We trust you'll figure things out. Like you always do. That was it. No acknowledgement of her struggles, no gratitude for her resilience, no recognition, no love, no dignity. Just a public declaration, you're not the favorite, and we don't even care who hears it. Emily sat frozen, eyes on the ivory tablecloth, heartbeat pounding in her ears, tears welling but not falling, not yet. And around her, nothing, just guests shifting awkwardly, some pitying glances, some forced smiles, some clapping. Lily beamed. Emily broke silently. And then came the second blow, soft, casual, deadly. Susan lifted her glass, her voice sweet as syrup and just as suffocating. "And you, Emily," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "you're the strong one, darling. You'll figure it out. You always do." Emily didn't blink, because blinking would let the tears fall. She sat perfectly still as those words wrapped in silk, but sharp as steel, sliced straight through her chest. The room went completely silent, a silence louder than any scream. Not a single voice spoke up, not one person interrupted, not even Lily. And in that awful pause, Emily realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was intentional. They weren't oblivious. They were deliberate. She wasn't being forgotten. She was being erased. The silence after Susan's words felt bottomless. Emily sat staring at her plate, heart hammering so loud she could hear nothing else, until squirk. The sound of a chair dragging against hardwood. Slow, harsh, unmistakable. Every head turned. There, at the edge of the table, almost forgotten in the glitz and gold, Grandpa James was standing. 82 years old. Suit slightly wrinkled, hair combed with care, back not quite straight, but eyes like fire. No one had seen him rise in years. No one had expected him to speak. But he had heard everything, watched everything, every word, every glance. Every insult slipped in lace and silver. And now he'd had enough. He leaned on his cane, fingers curled tightly around the handle, then spoke, "Now it's my turn." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like thunder. The room didn't breathe. Not a whisper, not a fork scrape, just the weight of Grandpa James's voice still hanging in the air. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. Its edges worn, its presence thunderous. He placed it gently on the table in front of Robert. "This," he said, "is my will." Gasps. Lily stiffened. Susan's hand tensed around her wineglass. James didn't flinch. He looked straight at Emily. His voice softened, not weak, but warm. "My house, my land, my savings, all of it goes to Emily." Another silence, then murmurs. A ripple through the crowd, like a stone dropped into still water. "Because she's the only one who's ever deserved it." He turned back to Robert and Susan. "You gave your money to Lily, so I gave mine to someone who actually knows what sacrifice looks like." Lily slammed her hand on the table. "You can't do this, Grandpa. That money was supposed to be mine." Her voice cracked, her perfect smile gone, replaced by panic, desperation, fury. James turned his gaze to her, calm, steady. "Can't I?" He took a step forward, slow but deliberate. "You've been handed everything since the day you could walk. Praise, gifts, money, applause. But what have you given back, Lily?" Silence. "What have you sacrificed? Who have you cared for without asking what's in it for you?" Lily's lips trembled, but no words came. James pointed to Emily. "Emily brought me soup when I was sick, called me every week, sat with me for hours just to hear me talk about things no one else cared about. She gave when she had nothing. And you just expected." The room was still. Aunt Linda wiped her eyes. Uncle Ben stared at his shoes. Even Lily's best friend lowered her gaze. James's voice dropped to a near whisper. Entitlement isn't love, Lily, and applause isn't worth when no one claps back for the right reasons. Emily stood up slowly. No drama, no tears, no need to say a word. She didn't look at her parents, didn't look at Lily. She just turned and walked toward her grandfather. James waited, holding out his arm like a gentleman from another era. And as Emily took it, the room that once ignored her watched her. Their silence wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy. Some felt guilt, some regret, others shame. And yet, Emily didn't absorb any of it. For the first time in a long time, she felt weightless. As she and James reached the door, she paused for just a second. She didn't look back, not out of pride, but because she finally understood. She never belonged there in the first place. She didn't need a room to accept her. She just needed to walk out of the wrong one. The apartment was small. No chandeliers, no marble countertops, no gold-rimmed glasses. Just a worn-out couch, a bookshelf crammed with dusty biographies, and a soft jazz tune playing from an old speaker in the corner. Emily placed her bag down, looked around, and for the first time in years, she exhaled. In the kitchen, a pot of beef stew simmered gently. The smell wrapped around her like a wool blanket in winter. James handed her a chipped bowl and smiled. Nothing fancy, kiddo, but it's made with love. They sat at the table, just the two of them. No toasts, no forced conversations, just spoons clinking, stories flowing, laughter breaking through years of silence. James leaned back, eyes soft with memory. You know, Emily, people think family is who shares your blood, but it's not. It's who shares your burdens, who shows up when no one else does. He paused, reaching over to gently squeeze her hand. You are my real family. Emily blinked back tears, not because she was sad, but because it finally made sense. She had never been unloved. She had just been loving the wrong people. It started with a single pencil line, then another, then a burst of color she hadn't touched in years. In the corner of James's spare room, now hers, Emily set up a tiny wooden desk by the window. Morning light poured in, brushing her canvas like a quiet blessing. She painted without fear, without deadlines, without waiting for anyone to say yes. It wasn't about being good. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about reclaiming her voice, one brushstroke at a time. By week 2, she filled a wall with portraits not of others, but of herself. Each one a version of the girl who was told she was too quiet, too strong, too independent. Now she painted the girl as she truly was, not forgotten, not background, but centered. James watched from the hallway, smiling. One evening, as they sipped tea, she said softly, "I want to open a gallery, Grandpa, a place where no one needs permission to be seen." James nodded. "Then let's build it, together." For the first time in her life, Emily wasn't waiting to be chosen. She was choosing herself. It came in a thick envelope, stamped, sealed, delivered with no return address. Emily opened it with steady hands. A lawsuit from her parents, claiming her grandfather James was mentally unfit when he wrote the will, that she, Emily, had manipulated an old man, that the inheritance was invalid, that they deserved everything. The same people who once told her to take care of herself were now fighting to take what little she finally had. Emily sat in silence. The stew pot on the stove bubbled like nothing had happened, but inside her something churned. Then James walked in. He wasn't surprised. "They'd rather rewrite history than admit they ignored you," he said calmly, "but I came prepared." He opened a drawer, pulled out a flash drive, and a thick file folder with signatures, video evidence, and doctor's letters confirming his full mental capacity. "They want a war?" James said quietly. "Then let's give them the truth." Emily nodded, no longer afraid. This wasn't about money. It was about voice, about worth. And for once, she knew she had the armor to fight. There was a time when Emily would have cried herself to sleep over a raised voice, when a single disapproving glare from her father would make her shrink into silence, when the word ungrateful haunted her every time she dared to want something more. But that Emily, she was gone. Now sitting across the mahogany table from her lawyer, Emily didn't flinch. Not when he laid out the intimidation tactics, not when he warned how ugly this could get, not even when he asked if she was sure she wanted to fight. Emily looked him straight in the eye and said, "We're not backing down, not one step." There was no tremble in her voice, no second guessing, because now she wasn't fighting for something, she was fighting because of everything she had survived. Because silence didn't protect her, because shrinking didn't earn her love, because being the strong one cost her everything, and now it was time to reclaim it. Her lawyer leaned back, a small smile forming. "Then let's make history," he said. Emily nodded. This wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. And she was no longer the girl waiting at the edge of the table. She was the one building her own. The sign was simple: Quiet Light Studio. Tucked between an old bookstore and a florist, it didn't scream for attention, it whispered. Inside, sunlight filtered through linen curtains, casting soft shadows on unfinished canvases. Shelves were filled with paints and pencils, not fancy ones, but ones that invited mistakes, growth, and expression. Emily hung no certificates, no degrees, no awards, just drawings, from children who had once sat in silence and now dared to speak with color. They came in shy. Some were too scared to even look up. Others flinched when asked about themselves. But here, they didn't have to explain. They just had to draw, or sit, or breathe. And slowly, miraculously, they bloomed. Emily didn't teach art. She taught safety. She taught stillness. She taught being seen without needing to shout. One day, a little girl left behind a sticky note on the window. "I like it here. It's quiet, but not lonely." Emily smiled. That was everything she ever wanted to build. The messages started small. A text from Mom, "We miss you. It's not the same without you." A voicemail from Lily, "I overreacted. Can we just talk?" A handwritten letter from her father, "You're still our daughter. We're still a family, Emily." But Emily didn't respond. Not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but because she no longer needed to. She used to ache for those words, used to lie awake imagining this very moment where they'd finally see her, hear her, miss her. But now they came too late, because love isn't what people say when they realize they've lost you. It's what they choose when you're still invisible. Emily folded the letters, placed them in a drawer, next to the old sketch she drew when she was 8 of a family holding hands and one girl standing behind them forgotten. Now she didn't cry. She simply whispered, "Family isn't blood. Family is who stands beside you when no one else does." And she walked back into the studio. To her real family. The city hummed softly outside. Streetlights blinked in the dusk like stars fallen to earth. Emily stood at the studio window. One hand pressed against the glass, the other stained in paint. Children's laughter echoed faintly from the back room. Brushes clinked in water jars. Jazz played low on the record player. She smiled. No spotlight, no applause, just the quiet, real joy of choosing her own life. Her reflection stared back, stronger, softer, whole. She whispered, "This is my life. Not borrowed, not begged for, not the leftovers of someone else's dream. This is mine, and I will never be invisible again." A breeze rustled the curtains. Outside, the city moved on, but inside the studio, the quiet light glowed brighter than ever. Not everyone born into the same family receives the same love. Sometimes the strongest person in the house is also the loneliest because they're so independent. Their pain, their efforts, go unnoticed. Emily's story reminds us family isn't defined by blood, but by who chooses to stand beside you when the world turns its back. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight, but to rise quietly and live a life that's truly your own. Let this sink in. You don't need permission to live your worth. You don't need anyone's validation to step into your light. You are enough, even if they never said it out loud. If you've ever felt forgotten, if you've ever hidden tears behind a smile just to keep going, if all you've wanted is someone to truly see you, then this channel is for you. Hit subscribe for more stories like Emily's powerful stories of healing, truth, and the quiet resilience of souls who once felt invisible. Drop a comment below to share your own journey, because your truth might be the light someone else is searching for in the dark. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are not alone.